Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Yo, what up, It's your boy Rubino.
And this DJ in the building.
And you listening to the UpNUp Podcast.
Yeah.
Wait, what are we doing?
I don't know, just listen.
Yes. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
What's going on?
You're listening to the UpNUp Podcast. I am your host, Rubino.
And I'm DJ man.
How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I'm feeling good.
Feeling good. It's Friday.
Friday afternoon.
TGIF.
Yeah.
I love doing episodes on Friday.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, because after we can just, get it popping, right?
Yeah, all time.
Yeah, man. So for those of you first-time listeners, hence the name UpNUp. This is a platform created to cultivate the culture, keep people on the up and up, keep people striving and going after what they want, but also highlighting those who are going after what they want, their visions, their goals, their dreams, and just staying on it, man. You know what I mean?
I swear, you be outdoing yourself with that. You're dope.
I'm just trying to let them know how it is. And then I also want to obviously always shout out the listeners, the viewers, the supporters, those who have just been, giving that support to us. We appreciate it. And, just make sure you rate, subscribe, review. I love the reviews because it gives us immediate feedback on episodes. So we'd love to hear that. So now getting out the way, today's guest that we have, I'm excited about this one, man. I'm really excited about this one. I'm excited about all the guests, but this one in particular because I know we can learn a lot from this woman. I would say today's guest is a woman. I would say she exemplifies what it means to live life on the up and up. I would say so. I would say someone who's spent a great deal of time working and helping companies and organizations, build their brands as a strategist. She's worked with companies anywhere from, Ruff Ryders Entertainment to MTV Networks and various other corporations.
Wow.
And overall, I would say she's someone who built her own brand and with the hopes that she can empower others to build theirs, right? Build their own.
I'm all for it, man.
Our guest is none other than the lovely and talented Briaan Barron.
Thank you, guys.
Round of applause. How's that? Was that good? That was good. Okay, that was good. I'm getting better.
Nice.
I'm getting better, man. I'm getting better on these rollouts. How are you doing?
I'm doing very good. Yeah. Happy to be here.
Man, we're happy to have you. For sure. So, I'm sure you've probably seen, an episode or two. Usually we start the show with a quote of the day, get our minds right, get the vibe right. And then they always come from my brother over here. He's a man of quotes. So what you got for us today, my man?
All right, man. So today, the quote is, the true mark of a professional or of professionalism is the ability to respect everyone else for their styles and always find something positive in every experience and highlight it in your thoughts and words.
Ooh. I can dig it.
Yeah. So
that's a good quote.
That one stuck with me today.
I like
that.
That's a good one.
Yeah. I'm always excited to hear what you got, man. This is a good one. But yeah, to kind of framework that, the quotes, obviously we use them to transition into our guests, their stories, what they're providing. And something that stuck out to me about that quote was it talks a lot about understanding at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Understanding and respecting other people's ways and visions at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So for you, Bree, I call you Bree, is that cool?
Absolutely.
Okay. So for you, Bree, being that you're in that realm of branding and being in that field, in that industry, where did that kind of start for you? Like, where did you grow up and kind of where did that start for you? How would you say?
I think my interest in branding developed. I didn't even know at that point that it was an interest in branding, but it started when I was in school, probably. All throughout my entire academic career, from elementary school through grad school, I went to private school. So I was used to being the one of few in the room like me, racially, socioeconomically, culturally. But I was also very introverted, and I think it was around high school that I realized that people were going to have stereotypes of me or make assumptions about who I was, where I came from, what I was capable of.
Yeah.
That manifests as microaggressions or jokes or whatever.
Yes.
But,
and you grew up where?
I grew up in Seattle.
You grew up in Seattle.
I was born and raised in Seattle.
Shout out to Seattle.
Yeah.
Sure, always.
And I think at the time, because I was so shy, I didn't really know how to defend myself from that or kind of take ownership over my own story in that context, especially because it wasn't it wasn't aggressive. It was subtle,
Yeah.
right? So I think I realized at one point that I needed to learn how to speak up for myself and also kind of craft the impression that people had of me.
Yes.
And be strategic about that.
Yes.
And so I started seeking out leadership positions. I started learning about how people get information, like what shapes our ideas about the world around us. And that's where I developed an interest in journalism and mass communications originally.
So it was kind of the art of communication and the science behind it. Sounds like the science behind communication was something that really interested you.
Yeah, just, how do we learn to communicate with one another? Like, where do we get these ideas from? And I felt like if I could learn how to manipulate that kind of storytelling practice, then I would have more control over my experience. And then that translated to me wanting to help others in my position do that as well. So and I loved writing. I love all kind of creative media, always a creative thinker.
Yeah.
So I was like, if I can make an impact like that and do the things that I enjoy doing, then that's my calling, right? So it started when I was really young. And then I started studying like media studies and stuff throughout college, just learning more about marketing and advertising and that whole world. And then just started practicing to build up my skill set, doing internships and stuff like that. So that's kind of where it started, really as a protection mechanism for myself, like to make sure that my experience was what I wanted it to be, and then I learned how powerful it was for others. So.
Yeah.
When you know yourself, you know yourself, they can't touch you,
Right, exactly.
They can't shake you for sure.
But that's dope how like it started from you defending yourself, and then you took it above and beyond and started making an impact, so. That's dope.
I mean, and no, to touch on that, branding is a form of defense. If you really look at it, right? You're like they always say, protect the brand, right? Like, you hear companies say that all the time. It's dope that you can see that in yourself, right? Let me protect myself first before I can try to protect anybody else. Right? Through branding.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
dope.
it has to start there, I think. Self-awareness is kind of like my kind of core value. But I think self-awareness, what people might not really realize, is that self-awareness is about knowing how you relate to other people. Like, it's not just about knowing yourself. It's about knowing, like, how you come across to others. Like, are you communicating your intent the way that you want to? Like, are you presenting yourself effectively for other people to understand you? So it's all about relationships at the end of the day, and that's what branding is really about.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's real. I think.
Definitely.
I think that is the biggest thing. And it kind of goes into my next question. So obviously branding does take a great deal of understanding, and I guess you can say compromise, right?
It can,
and so at what point did you kind of, obviously you touched on it, but like what were some like maybe moments where you knew, okay, I'm actually exercising that right now. I know consciously that I'm exercising this balance of understanding, but also compromising and getting what I want across.
Well, one time that made me really think about it was I went to college in New York. And so while I was out there, I was taking a class in, it was called Multimedia Uses of Oral History. And so part of what we would do is like choose subjects and conduct oral history interviews with them, ask them questions where, we could basically learn their story and just learning how to ask questions in a way that yielded storytelling answers as opposed to just yes or no answers. So I was in that class and I interviewed a guy who, he was like an urban fashion designer in New York for a well-known brand back in the 90s and 2000s. And so I'm interviewing him. I'm thinking I'm going to ask him questions. And he asks me, what do you want to do? Like, what is the thing that you want to do? And at the time, I've got like a ton of interests. I'm naming off hella stuff, thinking like, I'm so multifaceted. Like,
I can do it all.
Let me tell you all the things I can do.
For sure.
And so I finished rattling off all this stuff. And then he goes, no, but like, what do you want to do at the end of the day? Like, what are you going to be remembered for?
Facts.
And he was like, you got to make sure that you're not a jack of all trades, master of none. And I think that was the first time that I'd heard that quote. It stuck out to me because up to that point, I'm thinking that there's value to doing it all, so to speak. And it wasn't until I'm standing in front of a person who may have access to an opportunity for me, who may be able to give me resources that I need, who's basically asking me, who am I? And I didn't have a concrete answer. And I think that was one of the moments in my life when I was like, branding is important because you have to be able to articulate simply and clearly what you're here for, because you never know who you're talking to.
We're all our own brands at the end of the day. You know,
Yeah.
it's not just a business term. It's a real deal. You know, you got to control your appearance and your image, right?
Representation, bro.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
For sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Definitely. And so that's dope. That's dope that you, I mean, obviously you got a chance to experience that, you know, while you were in school over there in New York. So let's get to kind of, I want to get to kind of the work experiences that you've had, right? It's, you know, you frameworked kind of the engine behind what pushed you towards your calling, if you want to say that.
Right.
But what was like that first experience, right? That first work experience that you had where you were like, oh shit, I'm really doing it.
It's funny because I originally started a business while I was still a sophomore in college.
Okay.
I'm a self-taught graphic designer.
Okay.
And I went to a liberal arts school, so I didn't like study like practical techniques in marketing or branding. I was doing other stuff.
Okay.
But I've always loved illustrating and visual arts, and so I was in a class, and one of my professors, who was an important mentor of mine, he was about to deliver a talk on campus, and he wanted a flyer designed to promote that talk. And he asked me if I could work something up, and I designed something for him. Was just learning Photoshop at the time, like had asked my mom to find the creative suite somewhere for me, and she like found it on eBay for $150.
Hey, shout out moms.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I had this software, and I'm like trying it out, and I designed this flyer for him and show it to him, and he was like blown away by it. And we put it up all over campus, and the talk got a great turnout and everything. And I think that was one of the first moments where I was like, I have a skill set that I could develop to, you know, to help other people amplify their message. Like, and so that's when I was like, I want to do this kind of work for people who don't have the budget for like marketing agencies or graphic designers. So originally I was working with activists, educators, like people who were really focused on the message. I wanted to give them the visuals that they needed to really put what they were doing out there. So in like 2012, I started my first company. At that point, it was called 3-Dimensional Images, and I was doing graphic design for nonprofits.
Okay.
I was doing it while I was in school and basically learning how to be a business owner at the same time.
Yeah,
So I was-
self-taught.
Yeah.
Self-taught.
Yeah.
That's dope.
Yeah.
For
So I
sure.
did that, closed that down after a couple of years so that I could get more work experience, and then relaunched Branding by Bree just 2 years ago now in 2016.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's dope. That's dope. And I ask you these questions because when people watch or listen to these episodes, they need to understand that reflecting is a big part of knowing where you're going, right?
Word.
The fact that you can just reflect on that and give us the details in terms of not only what you did, but how it helped you, how it impacted you now, right? So thank you for that.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, I mean, you know, we talk about branding like every motherfucking day, bro. All the time.
All
man.
the time, man.
Yeah,
You know?
no, for sure. So, now you did have a little bit of experience working in the entertainment industry,
Yeah.
correct? Is that different from what you? I mean, obviously, it's a transition from what you were doing early on.
Yeah.
So, what was that like? What did that look like for you?
Well, so the way that it happened was I went to college in a town called Bronxville, but
Okay.
it's like right next to a town called Yonkers in New York,
Okay.
which is where Ruff Ryders Entertainment is headquartered.
Yeah.
And so while I was at school, there was a career fair. I stopped by one day. Ruff Ryders was there looking for interns. So I stopped by, not really expecting anything. I had my resume and everything. And it just so happened that career fair took place like a week before they were about to kind of relaunch this new label called Ruff Ryders Indie.
I think I heard about that when it happened.
Yeah. So they had
Okay.
signed some kind of like underground rappers and some indie artists and stuff like that. We're
Dope.
trying to kind of revamp the brand.
Dope.
So I went to the career fair. I ended up getting an internship on the spot that day, and started working there the next week. And I was present for the launch party for the
new
revamp
label,
of the
the
brand.
revamp,
They
yeah.
had like just renovated the studios and all
Were
that.
you into hip hop, like Ruff Ryders and that whole thing?
I love music.
Okay.
Like I grew up. I was a singer as well.
Okay.
And so
Oh,
when I was
nice.
in college, I was studying music, but I was studying like music theory, blues, and jazz history. Like I
Okay.
love
Yeah.
having a thorough understanding of it.
For sure.
So I was always interested in the entertainment industry, like
Yeah.
where that creativity meets the business world, et cetera. So I
Exactly.
was stoked to get the opportunity.
That's dope.
I remember my first day, I pull up to the studio and like Swiss Beats is standing right outside.
Wow.
And I was like,
Damn.
okay, here we go. Like just jumping right in.
But you understood what you were there for.
Yeah.
Right. Some people, they come in these buildings and it might be something that you see all your life and you might get starstruck or whatever.
Oh,
the case
yeah,
is.
nah.
But you were there for a specific reason. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I know branding is my thing, so I'm not gonna come in there and try to get a record deal, right?
Oh yeah,
right?
No.
Because a lot of motherfuckers be trying that shit. You know?
Absolutely no.
So, no, that's
I wasn't
dope.
trying to get a foot in the door for that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
I was excited to learn. I just recognized that it was a huge opportunity.
Yes.
Like I had just gotten to New York, and to be able to work with a label that's recognized and stuff
Oh,
was
yeah.
dope. So
Oh, yeah.
what was interesting about it was that they were kind of starting from a blank slate. Like Ruff Ryders hadn't been active for years, and
Yeah.
so I was there in a moment where it felt a lot like a startup or like a small business because they were starting fresh, but it was with people who had been at the label since it was like popping.
Yeah, for sure.
So it was a cool environment because I had a chance to come in and like ask the right questions and like position myself to make a difference, and build relationships with people who had great experience. So I was always in focus mode.
Yeah.
And I was there for about a year and a half. Within a couple of months, I was like actually helping to write the marketing plans for the new artists, like doing
Wow.
art direction on the photo shoots and
Wow.
stuff. So it's just like you have to, once you get in the door, you have to be prepared to do something with the access. I
Yes.
think a lot of people are talking about like you got to get a seat at the table, but like, so what do you do when you get there though? Like, because you're
That's
not going to
real.
stay there long
Yeah.
if you don't bring
That's
anything
real.
to the
Bring-
table.
what are you
So,
doing?
Yeah, you gotta have an impact,
Yeah,
That's,
absolutely.
so
Yeah.
a lot of people I feel like sometimes just get a position, they're just happy to be there and kind of don't.
Yeah.
And
They
then
just,
stop.
yeah.
No,
Wow.
that's dope. That's
Yeah.
dope. I think it takes that, but it takes experiences. Like, I can even speak for myself. I remember doing an internship for iHeartRadio at one point, and it was brief, but that experience, because it didn't go the way I thought it would, right?
Yeah.
But that experience, man, it planted so many seeds in my mind in terms of how militant you have to be, in a sense,
Yeah.
when you go into a situation, knowing what I want out of it. Right. And I think that's exactly what you did when you said, okay, I know why I'm here. Right.
Yeah.
And it took you to, it took you on to other things. Right. And
Yeah.
a better understanding of
Yeah.
yourself.
It's interesting though, because I was at Ruff Ryders for a year and a half. It was a great
Yeah.
experience. I mean, I learned a lot and I made a lot of friends and I made an impact. And then I was at MTV after that, and it was an entirely different experience. And it just goes to show that you always have to stay humble and stay ready. Because I had a production management internship at MTV, which was the reason I ended up leaving Ruff Ryders. And, Viacom, huge corporation.
Yeah.
I'm like going into Manhattan like a couple of times a week. So now I'm really feeling like, okay, like I'm out here.
Yeah.
But I was like shy. Like, I got there and I had my desk and everything. I'd show up every day and just kind of do what was asked of me. And in an internship at a company like Viacom, like that is not enough. Like there's a trillion interns there.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you're
Yeah.
not willing to like always be up, making the rounds, asking what's needed of you, like going the extra mile, like that'll come and go like nothing.
Being proactive.
Yeah. So that was another like huge learning opportunity for me. I ended up like getting a lot out of it in terms of what I saw and what I was exposed to and the experience of being there, but I didn't make as big of an impact there because I didn't have the same mindset I did when I went into Ruff Ryders. So you just always gotta stay ready and proactive and curious,
Yeah. I find that interesting because it's kind of like breaking out your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Kind of like how you said you were shy, but once you break out that comfort zone, you start making the moves you got to make, then it's kind of like
Yeah.
have
takes you to
to.
where you want to be, right?
You
Yeah.
have to.
No, that's real. That's real. And I think, a big thing about it is a lot of times people talk about what they want, right? I want this, I want that.
Yeah.
This is something we talked about, I remember. But you need to know what you don't want. I think that's the biggest thing, knowing what you don't want, right? Is that something you may have saw when you got to Viacom, in a sense, in comparison to what you were doing at Ruff Ryders, where you felt like, okay, I kind of have a better understanding and I know why I'm here. And then when you were there, did it feel like, why am I really here? Was it like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you figure out what works for you along the way. Like, I think I figured out by comparing the two that what worked for me at Ruff Ryders was that I had, like, a super engaged team around me.
Okay.
And at Viacom, like, everybody's kind of out for themselves. Like,
Gotcha.
the people, they work there, they're doing their job. Like, they're not going to nurture you like I was nurtured at Ruff Ryders.
Yeah.
And so you over time learn to articulate, like, what kind of work environment works for you and what you respond to best, and that's always valuable.
It takes time. Takes time. Well, so now let's talk about, obviously, your work experience led you to being, I would say, an expert in this realm. This is an interesting question I have for you, right? Because for you being a Black woman, and I'm sure Ruff Ryders and Viacom were just two of many different companies that trusted you with their brand, right? Mm-hmm. But did you ever feel some pushback from a vision you may have for how things should be done by a company that you knew didn't probably understand your culture and where you were coming from? So what was that like? Did you ever have a moment where there was some pushback in terms of the casting the vision that you had?
Interestingly, I have had those moments. I don't think that it's been from like cultural disconnect though, because I've pursued working with clients who want to work with me because I relate to them on a cultural standpoint.
That's
so
good.
when I started my company and I've been freelancing consulting for some time, like I was working with people who wanted to work with a woman of color, or who wanted to work with a Black person, or somebody who at least understood how community works. So they sought me out for that reason. But the thing that comes with that is I was also intentionally working with people who didn't have a lot of experience working with a marketing professional, or who didn't really understand the importance of marketing and branding. So when I've gotten pushback, it's mostly been on like, why is this valuable? Why should I invest money in this aspect of the business? Like, what difference does it make if I'm on Instagram or not? Like, it's mostly just come from a place of like not knowing, and not having worked at that level. Just
a lack of understanding, lack of knowledge of what is going to work. And they're like, I don't see it.
Yeah. And so I learned early on, like in the earlier iterations of my business, where I had to like kind of edit my business model several times, because I thought, I'm a professional. I'm going to come in, tell them kind of what the scope of work is and what my plan is, and they're going to trust me to do it. But I ended up spending, and I still end up spending a lot of time educating my clients about what the process is and why we're doing it that way. And so I learned that I needed to really integrate that part into my business model and how I promote it and how I temper expectations. Like, so I'm just as much a designer and a strategist as I am like an educator and a business coach.
At the same, you gotta be able to teach it. Sometimes teaching something is how you learn it the best, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I always heard that growing up. It's like you can teach something and you know what I mean, and you know it.
Absolutely.
That's real. So going from that, you got your hands on a lot of different things, right? I wouldn't say you can put yourself in a box, but what we're talking about branding, and I know you got a lot of things that you're doing right now, right?
Yeah.
Obviously you launched branding with Bree, that platform, and so we had a conversation recently about something that's on the horizon that I know you're excited about. I'm very excited about after hearing about it.
Me too.
Called The New Professional.
Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit about that platform, kind of give a description of its purpose and what you guys are aiming to accomplish with that.
Yeah, for sure. I do a lot of thinking about like what the ultimate impact is that I want to make, like outside of just what I do tactically, like what's my purpose, right? So one of the things that I care a lot about is that the younger generation, like the current generation of millennials and those coming up underneath us, and particularly those of us who come from like disadvantaged communities or historically disenfranchised identity groups, that we know what our options are in terms of finding success, and that we are empowered to pursue those options, whether or not we come from a lot of resources or a lot of like background knowledge or mentorship. Like I want us all to be equipped to forge our own path to success. So a few months ago, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine. He's an actor, and we were talking about his brand. And he mentioned in the conversation, he was like, I don't really like the term professionalism. And it caught my attention. I was like, why do you feel that way? It was like, I just feel like it has like connotations that, are not really inclusive of like, everybody's like style or approach, or, the way that we think of professionalism can be kind of limiting.
Very general.
You're right.
Yeah.
Very
and
general.
I think that it evokes images of like having a fly suit and like having a corner office and shit.
Just
like,
talking,
we were just
talking
talking
about
that.
that.
Yeah. And so, but
crazy.
I like the term professionalism because I believe in like having a certain like code of conduct with how you do business.
Yeah.
And so that conversation with him really sparked my interest. And so basically the concept that I came up with is that the things that allow us to be professional are things like informed decision making, financial literacy, professional etiquette, just being aware of how to write an email, even like proper communication skills, like high standards for ourselves. Like the things that are actually substantial about professionalism have nothing to do with where you work or what you wear or how much money you make or what you do, right?
Yeah.
So the concept of the new professional is that I wanted to create a one-day like pop-up academy, basically, where we would hit on 4 core subject areas, from self-care to financial literacy to the professional workspace to entrepreneurship or freelancing or creative, you know, basically a one-stop shop for a lot of the lessons that we don't learn in school. And I want it to be taught by people who are currently young professionals figuring it out. Like oftentimes we get these messages about how to act right from generations that are far removed from us, telling us how we should be presenting ourselves. But I have a network of incredibly talented, impressive friends who are forging paths to success that are like off the beaten path. Like maybe they didn't get a formal education and they're still an entrepreneur. You know, maybe they're an artist, but they're figuring out how to make a living off of that art. Like, so I want to bring them together and basically create a platform where we can talk to other people our own age, as well as like 16, 17, 18-year-olds before they hit the adulting world about what works and what doesn't, and just have like candid conversations about it.
Be relatable. Right? I think we talked about that, being that the term professionalism, like you got to teach them how to be a modern day professional, right? It's so archaic now to just rock a suit and tie. Remember you was telling about the
like
homie.
it could like let's say somebody who doesn't like to wear suit and ties, right? And they look at it and they're just like, oh damn, I can't be a professional, right? So it's kind of like you're changing that whole narrative.
Exactly.
It's more about the concept than the image, right?
You were talking about that one interview. One of your friends went to an interview, or he talked about an interview where he came in with a suit. The interviewer was like,
or pretty much was like one of my old managers when he was getting interviewed or whatever. He came in a full suit, and then the guy that was interviewing him had like sandals and shorts, and he's just like, you know, it kind of threw him off. He was like, oh damn, you know. So
where do you think that comes from, though? Right? That, I mean, obviously it's been fed and ingrained in our brains, right, since we were kids and growing up. Like, oh, you want to get a job? This is how you're supposed to look. This is how you're supposed to act. But what I love about the new professional platform is it's teaching you how to, you know, create your own. Go back to it. Create your own brand, right? But know yourself at the same time. I think you're building your character. That's what's most important is character. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? It's definitely about
dope.
character. And I mean, I guess I think about it a lot too, because I always knew coming up in school that I was going to have some privileges based on the way that I spoke or the things that I've read or the network that I developed because of the schools that I went to that other folks in my community were not going to have. And it was never okay with me to just take those things and not find a way to translate that back to where I came from. But on top of that, like, college is not for everybody.
Facts.
You know, a corner office or whatever, corporate world, like, that's not for everybody. And I don't ever want somebody to feel like they can't take themselves seriously or make a living that's comfortable for them just because they're not choosing a path that looks conventional.
Or they don't fit this box right, that they're supposed to be in, right?
Yeah, because you get a bunch of like super creative people just kind of like sitting at the house, like sitting on talent because, you know, they can't see the way to make a lifestyle off of that.
I mean, it's such a different era. It's so different, bro. It's a do-yourself era. We have so many resources, maybe sometimes to a fault, right? To where it's like, oh, damn, I could do this, at the click of a button, right? But sometimes you just need direction, right? And I think that's something that the new professional can definitely help young kids and young teenagers grow up and get into. No, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, well, so I'm sure you have a very strategic way of rolling this out, right?
I do.
Right. I would assume you got something planned. So
Yeah.
so how do you plan on rolling this out and giving it to the people?
Well, so the idea is that the actual event itself would take place in fall of 2019.
Okay.
But leading up to that, I really want to kind of build the platform in advance. And so the idea is to do a limited series podcast where I'm going to be interviewing. It's going to be like 6 episodes and just interviewing people from my network who are working in different fields or kind of doing their thing. Each episode would have a different theme. And I want to just have those candid conversations with them about what works and what doesn't. And I want that podcast to kind of air in the weeks leading up to the event so that the audiences who may be attendees of the event have an opportunity to get to know some of the guests before they actually get to the day of conference.
That's dope.
I put a lot of thought into this because I've attended a lot of like conferences and networking events and stuff like that. And, you know, some of them are really valuable and some of them, you know, are big productions without a lot of substance. And I basically just like made a list of all the things that I don't like about my conference experience. And I was like, how can I kind of make sure that I avoid that and what I put on? And one of the things that I've noticed is that some conferences, like there's a ton of momentum around the day, then the day comes and goes and there's no follow-up. The platform doesn't exist outside of the event itself. So I was like, I want to continue the dialogue, have it build up to an event, but make sure that we're still like holding conversations about it even beyond that. So that's where the idea to do the podcast series as well came from.
That's
important.
That's
you got to get that
amazing.
message out there. You know, that's a message that a lot of people need to hear.
Yeah,
you know, so.
yeah. So I think it should be good. So the idea is to start working on some fundraising for the platform this summer, and we'll do like a couple of fundraising events. I'll apply for some grants and things like that, and then the full-fledged kind of coordinating for the whole thing is going to start this fall.
Man,
yeah,
that's dope.
Yeah,
that's amazing, man. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Man, but that's such an important thing for the young kids, right? Especially from our communities, right? Like they need to have people who look like them, who they can relate to. Tell them, yo, it's okay. You don't gotta have it figured out where you're at right now.
Exactly.
Right. But these are some things that you should know right now.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's the key ingredient. Is
that's
like.
Good.
Is it to come from the voices of people who are figuring it out as we go?
Oh,
like, because also like this day and age, shit changes really quickly, you know, and technology changes really quickly in the ways that we can use it and stuff like that. And I think that there's something important about just kind of a living document of how we do this. And there are just things that, you know, we have to unlearn from our cultural backgrounds and communities.
Yeah.
There's things like some of us just never learned how to like balance our finances. Like we don't know nothing about how to invest something. Like, you know, we have an opportunity right now to kind of change the norms of where we come from. And I think that we should actively do that. Yeah,
I mean, and those disadvantages and disenfranchisement, like all that has been, you know, it's deeply rooted, right? I think we know, I mean, you know what I'm saying? If you're up on that history and you know where we come from, what we've been through in this country. And so it takes things like this, like the new professional and platforms such as that, to change the way we think, because at the end of the day, it's all about the mental, right?
Yeah,
it's all about the mental. So we got to change the way we think. And I think also something I want to touch on as well. You've been given a lot of great opportunities, I feel like, just to be an influencer and someone who impacts culture. More particularly, I'm sure you're excited about what you got going on tomorrow.
Yeah.
At the Black Babes Brunch, which is put on by Black Seattle. Am I correct?
Yeah.
So they have you as a keynote speaker.
That's right.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised why. So what's that about? I guess if you can explain that event. I've heard about it, but I'm not too familiar with it.
Yeah, my understanding is that it's pretty new. Black Seattle, it's like this duo that's just kind of like trying to create. They have a big presence in the digital space now where they're just trying to make sure people know about the events going on around town that appeal to, you know, young Black Seattleites. But the Black Babes and Brunch event, I think that this is their second or third one. I'm not sure which. But it's kind of like a networking opportunity for young Black women in the area in various fields to come together. The one tomorrow is specifically going to focus on branding and what the misconceptions are, how to do it effectively. They reached out to me like a couple of months ago, and I think they must have found me on Instagram. So we met up at Cafe Evel and talked about it, and I was totally down. It's going to be at Hillman City Collaboratory. I'm super excited. That's a great space for anybody who's not familiar with it. So anytime I can kind of get in a room with people and like just have a conversation about branding, I love that kind of thing. It's one thing to work one-on-one with clients and like work on a specific project, but like branding and marketing across the board, regardless of industry and whether you're doing it for a business or yourself, like it all comes down to kind of some core things, which is like storytelling and visual presentation and like engagement. Like, and so I love talking to a room full of people from various fields and backgrounds because you get to see what the commonality is across all of those. So
that's a skill,
it's gonna be dope.
That's a dope skill to have.
So speaking of branding, like what would be like a conversation you would have about branding? Like if somebody wanted to go into branding, like what's some like key pieces of advice you'd give them?
I think I always want to start with making sure people are clear on like what branding is not, because I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions that the brand is the value. Like nowadays, especially, everybody feels like they have a brand. Like everybody can build a brand, but everybody's not just automatically a brand. And I think that, so what I try to emphasize is like the work, the product, like the core offer, like that's what has to be strong first. The brand is intended to add value to that. So what I mean by that is like, and this is one of the other major lessons I learned earlier on in my business was that a lot of clients haven't solidified their business model yet. Like important things like, is your revenue stream solid? Like, is the product that you offer actually like sustainable for you to produce? Like things like that have to be nailed down first. And when it comes to personal branding, it's things like, you know, do you know what your core competencies are? Like, what are you actually great at in practice? Like, what have you studied? What have you researched? What kind of experience do you have under your belt to validate what you say about yourself? And so, if somebody wants to get into branding, I just mainly focus on the fact that recognize that it's a tool used to promote something that's already valuable. It cannot be the value itself. And I think that's the other reason why it's important for me to talk to young people about branding, because a lot of folks think like there's no barrier to entry anymore. You can throw up an Instagram page, you know, and you think if you have like 5,000 followers, like you are somebody. Like that doesn't sustain itself. So just understanding like branding is a tool. And it takes a lot of detailed critical thinking. I think the detail-oriented part is one of my core strengths with people too. Is like, because I think of everything. When you first pitch your idea, like I have all the questions and all the answers immediately. You know, do you know what channels you're going to market that on? What are your colors? What are your fonts? Like, so one of the things that I like to bring to my clients, and the reasons I work with small businesses, is because I'm like a one-stop shop for like various parts of a marketing department.
Got it.
A lot of larger corporations have an art director, have a copywriter, have somebody that does digital. You rarely find a source that has everything in one. So I try to be that.
And it's coming from the same voice too. A lot of times the message can get diluted when it's coming from this person, this person. For sure. For sure. That's dope. I actually was pulled something from your Instagram page that really spoke out to me, but it talked about I think what you just explained touches on that, but it says figure out your why before your how to. Right?
Man.
And
that's something I live by. Like why?
That's real. It's like you think you got something, but you don't even know like why you're even why are you posting this right now? Right? Like why are you making these flyers, right? Like why'd you create this logo? Why'd you promote this message? But you got to have that why before you can actually do it, right?
And you just always have to be asking yourself why. Like you don't just answer it once and then not ask yourself why for another year. Like you have to always like, and I think I learned that especially working with like nonprofits and small businesses, like sometimes you're just trying to get stuff done. Like you're on autopilot. You're like, oh, we got a fundraising event because we do a fundraising event every year. So let's just do it. Like, and somebody in the room has to be like, but yo, like, did you raise more money last year than you did the year before? And if not, why? Like, is there a way that you could switch up the format of this event so that you actually yield the results you're looking for? Like, you always have to be asking the right questions so that you're doing the right activities. So that's where that comes from.
Stay curious. Stay curious.
It's all about like improvement. That's what it sounds like. Because if like you're not asking those questions, how you know you're gonna improve? You know, so.
Keep it real with yourself, man. Some people don't want. Some people know. They know. They just don't want to ask themselves a question.
And that's fine.
Yeah,
Like,
it's real.
yeah.
Nah, that's dope. That's dope, man.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And yeah, usually I always ask this question here, towards the end of our show, because this question will give you a chance to kind of sum up all the value you just gave us, but then also it'll talk a little bit more about the value that you're going to bring down the line. So if you can, what's one word to describe what keeps you on the up and up? You only got one word.
I know.
I like how we get the same reaction from everybody. Yeah, it's like
every
damn.
time. This word drives everything I do in life, and I'll see if I am able to explain how this ties back to branding.
That's
but
fine.
Empathy.
Empathy.
Yeah. I think like ultimately what I feel is that our entire experience in this world is about how we relate to or connect to other people, like other beings, right? So, and that ties into marketing and branding in the sense that it's all about communicating in a way that's palatable to somebody you don't know. Like it's all about being able to express yourself and be understood by somebody that is a stranger to you. And I think that empathy is what keeps me on the up and up, because no matter what is going on in the world and no matter what we're all going through as individuals, like if you know that you're not alone, somehow that keeps us alive out here. Like that is
That's
what
real.
keeps us
Yeah.
showing up every day.
Yeah.
Because the fact of the matter is, like,
Yeah.
we don't have to show up every day.
That's
like
true.
for each other, for
Yeah.
ourselves. Like we don't have to be here. You
That's
know,
true.
but it's knowing that we're not the only ones. It's knowing that there are people who love us, or that we have an opportunity to touch people, that keeps us like moving.
Yeah.
So,
It's bigger.
yeah.
It's bigger than the individual.
That's
Yeah.
deep.
Yeah,
That's
that's real.
deep.
I love that
You know,
one.
I-
I
yeah, I
love
like
that
that
one.
man.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, man, and thank you for coming through, being a guest on our show.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sharing
appreciate it.
sharing your story, dropping a lot of these gems, dropping jewels all over the studio. You know what I mean? And we wish you much success
Thank
with
you, guys.
everything you got
Yeah.
going on. The new professional platform. Branding by Briaan, everything else, and please come back when the
Yeah.
platform is ready to
Let
go.
us know.
Absolutely.
We're gonna help
Invite
you
me
push all
back.
that. We're
Okay.
gonna
Oh
help you
yeah,
push
oh
that
yeah,
for sure.
yeah. And you're
Dope.
officially a member of the Up and Up.
Yes.
Yes. Round of applause.
That was great.
Thank you guys. That was great.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thanks.